Welcome back to my channel. My name is LaShawn and this is Lush Uncut. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the rise of the phenomenon that is commercial surrogacy. I was scrolling on X, which is formerly known as Twitter, the other day and came across a bunch of posts about a man by the name of Shane Dawson. Mr. Dawson has recently welcomed a pair of twin boys with his partner via surrogacy. Apparently, there's a ton of controversy about Shane online. He is an old school YouTuber that became very popular in the early days of YouTube and was canceled last year because some of his old videos came under fire. I am not going to talk about Shane in this video because I have not done a ton of research into the background of his story, so I really don't want to just be talking for the sake of talking. But what I do want to talk about in today's video is the similarities between commercial surrogacy and human trafficking. When surrogacy first came onto the scene and became more well-known and more accepted by the general public, it was usually the case of a couple that was unable to naturally conceive a child, whether for medical reasons or simply reasons outside of their control. And the surrogate was usually a close family member or family friend. Now, things has obviously since changed, and now surrogacy seems to just be another way of having children. Most notably, celebrity Kim Kardashian had 2 of her children via surrogacy, and since then, a bunch of celebrities have followed, including Paris Hilton, Khloe Kardashian, Angela Bassett, Elton John, Tyra Banks, Dwayne and Gabrielle Union. Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union. With the rise of commercial surrogacy came a lot of criticism of the practice. One notable critic of this phenomenon is conservative commentator Allie Beth Stuckley. This is what she had to say about the practice in her podcast or on her podcast, Relatable.
And then there's the whole issue of commercialized surrogacy. And that is, I think, a heinous industry that basically is sex trafficking, where very often poor women, low-income women, are pressured or feel pressured to sell their bodies for money. There are many issues and consequences, physical consequences, emotional and mental consequences that come from buying the eggs from one woman. If you're talking about 2 gay men, like we're about to talk about, buying the eggs from one woman and implanting them in the uterus of another woman, and then taking that child away immediately, both from his biological mother and from the woman who carried him for 9 months, whose smell and feel and heartbeat he knows, whose touch he innately longs for. Taking him away sooner than we take a puppy away from his mother, and then raising them without a mom. And then, of course, the same issue in a lot of ways comes up when you're talking about 2 women using sperm donation, IVF, and all of that. You are purposely taking a child away from his father.
So the question then begs, is commercial surrogacy human trafficking? The United Nations defines child trafficking as the illegal movement, which is the buying and selling of children, typically for the purposes of forced labor or sexual exploitation. Now, I know to some of you, comparing commercial surrogacy to child trafficking seems a bit extreme, but I disagree. The only difference between the two is the intent. Now, obviously, selling a child for the purpose of, forced labor or sexual exploitation is far more worse and far more evil than 2 men or 2 women deciding to have a child via surrogacy. But again, the only fundamental difference is the intent, or I guess you can say the consent of the adults that are involved. Unfortunately, I do not think that consent, makes something morally upright. Just because people are agreeing to doing something doesn't mean that it is okay. In addition to that, the child is not consenting to being brought into the world in such an unnatural manner. Which kind of brings me to my first criticism of commercial surrogacy, which is that the child is the least, thing or person considered in the entire exchange. the well-being of the child actually comes last, because it's different if you are adopting a child that's already bought into the world and you're thinking, well, this child can have a better life if I decided to adopt it and take it in and raise it as my own. You are purposely bringing a child into a very complicated, confusing situation. And I feel like every time we step out of God's natural order when it comes to having children, things are usually just unnecessarily complicated. The same goes for when a single woman decides to, get impregnated via a sperm donor instead of finding a partner to raise a child with. I just don't think that it is a good idea for us to make it normal to bring children into this world in such complicated and confusing situations. In addition to that, surrogacy tends to turn babies into accessories. Because I've heard a lot of stories, especially about celebrities choosing which sex they want to have, what type of features they want to have, especially when you have, homosexual couples deciding to, choose an egg donor or sperm donor. They go through this person's attributes and they go through physical features that they want to have. It's not letting Mother Nature take its course and just, you get what you get, basically, when you have children the natural way. That way, it's not necessarily about you, but it is about the beauty of being able to raise a child and being able to accept that child no matter what sex they are, no matter what hair color or eye color or, characteristics they have. That really is the labor that comes with being a parent. Going back to comparing, commercial surrogacy to child and human trafficking, the fundamental reasons why those are similar is because you are purchasing a child. You are renting someone else's womb. You are purchasing an egg or a sperm, and that whole process, there's a lot of money that is exchanged. And at the end of it, you end up with a human being. That is wrong. If we're saying that selling, human beings is a problem, and I think we can all agree that it is an issue, then that has to apply across the board. Before I end this video, I think I should have said this disclaimer early on, but I'm going to say it now. Not all surrogacy is bad. For example, if it's a voluntary situation, how it was in the old days when a heterosexual a couple decided they want to have kids and they're unable to, and they have a friend or a family member say, I'm going to go ahead and do this for you guys. That way you can still have a biological child and being able to raise that child. In cases like that, it is better for it to be voluntary because the child is being thought of first. And I feel like that's when you involve money in that type of transaction, it just makes the practice a little unnerving and borderline, or I think actually immoral. But I'm not saying that all surrogacy across the board is wrong, but I do think there is an issue with commercial surrogacy, especially how it is being practiced now with these celebrities literally spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to literally just buy a child.